Hi and welcome to another tutorial. Today we're going to look at how to use the dials and we'll explore all the different options in that. Before we start turning dials and creating stuff, let us first quickly have a look at a dial structure. Now we have three different bases. We have the base 10, the base 44 and the base 336. Now the base 44 is the outer circle from 0 to 44, and the base 10 and base 336 is the inner circle from 0 to 10. Although the base 336 is only from 0 to 9, we had created a system that compensates for the deviation in angle for the base 336. There is a school of thought that designate the different bases to a different area. For instance, base 10 is the etheric, the base 44 emotional, and the base 336 is mental. But my personal thought in this is that if radionics were created in 1822 by Dr. Abrams, and that was base 10, and then base 44 was created in 1945, a whole 123 years later by Malcolm Ray, and then the base 336 about 30 years after that by Yvonne Kuhn, then we can clearly see that even in today's modern instruments 200 years later, most people are still stuck to the base 10. And since most people still only used in the base 10 and being not aware of the different values designated to the different bases, it's safe to say that it depends on your own preference. If you believe that the bases are linked to the different values, then and it works for you, then by all means use it. I often get asked the question, why the different bases and which one is the best? Now, my viewpoint on that is that if you compare the base 44 to a Ferrari and the base 10 and base 336 to a VW Bug, then both will get you from point A to point B, but the base 44 Ferrari would make it much more fun and enjoyable to get to point B. And if you really look at it from that point of view, is that it's all about the angle of deviation. Because of the smaller increments on the base 44 from an angle of deviation point of view, the rate that we create is far more superior in and refined in structure than within the base 10 and base 336. Let's get to the hurricane. We're back on the hurricane, and we're going to start off with doing a simple single remedy and then work our way up to a bit more complex ideas. A rate is input from left to right, top to bottom. I'm going to use the rate for aconite, which is 5, 10, 21 and 41. The rest of the dials will be on 0. Because we use base 44, the selector switch will be on 44. We select a time period of 1 minute. We always advise that we use energy and potency in conjunction with the rates. So we're going to use 75, and I'm going to use a potency of 200C, which is 4, 6, and 8. Now we have here two options. We can either make a remedy as we normally do by placing a container of alcohol on the output plate and then press start button. After the time period had lapsed, our remedy is ready, and we do the James Bond thing. Shaken, not stir. And we have a remedy. Now, the second option to this would be to broadcast the remedy to somebody over a distance, making use of a witness. Now, a witness can be a photo, a hair sample, somebody's signature, his name and birth date. Now, one thing that you need to take in consideration is when you use a photo, that the photo should be of the person alone and should not incorporate anybody else or anything else in the photo. So it's best to take a photo against a blank wall, and that makes a far better option. Now, with this same principle apply, if you place the witness on the witness plate or the output plate, you just press the start button. After the 1 minute time period, you had now successfully sent the vibration of Aconite to your person. Take this idea one step further. We can look at a different option, and that is within the remedy of Aconite. There are two different complementary remedies to that, which is coffea and sulfur. Now, sulfur is quite often called the chronic aconite, and we can add that to the system. You can always continue off where you left off, so the last one was 51, and the rate for sulfur is 9, 20, 23, 33, and 42. The rest of the dials still stay on 0. You can leave the energy on 75 and select whatever potency you want to use, and then the same rule apply. You can either put it into a liquid form as a remedy, or you can broadcast it to the person over a distance. And that is one way of actually adding or complement a specific remedy, and we will now look into a few different versions of that, which makes this a very unique system. In our next example, I want to look at what we call open-end commands. Now, an open-end command is something like build, repair, restore, balance. There's hundreds of these open-end commands with no specific connotation to anything. Now, in my example that I want to use, I'm going to use repair, which is 6, 9, and 16. We will always first add the command because we want to give it a purpose. The purpose is to repair. What we want to repair, in this instance, I'm going to repair the liver. And then I'm going to add the rate for liver, which is 8, 10, 21, 30, and 34. The rest of the dials still stay on 0. Energy level at 75. And I'm going to use 50M, which is 778. Now, again, with this, you can either make a remedy from it, or you can treat them distantly. Now, there's one more option to this, and that's just to take it one step further and use a rate, for instance, like liver mix. if it will fit on the dial, you can always add on to this. Now liver mix would be 4, 7, 9, and 10. So here we have now a very complex remedy made up of a command which tells us what we want to do. We want to repair something. We will tell it what we want to repair, and that's the liver, and then give an additional remedy if it's possible that supplement this whole treatment. And that's one way of actually create a complex remedy from a command. In the next example, I want to take it a little bit in a different format, and I want to use a rate which I think is one of the rates I'm using so often, and that is find and rectify all disharmony, or the other one is find and rectify all defects. Quite often when you're not sure what to do, then I quite often will use one of these just to start the treatment and start getting something done. But in this case, there's a different way of using it at the same time. I'm going to use find and rectify all disharmonies. Now the rate for that would be 4, 8, 12, 15, and then 17. Now on its own, it will actually scan through the body and find all disharmony within the body and then systematically reduce it or fix the problem. But one way I found that it works quite wonderful is that if I also then give it a purpose or direction. So if I say find and rectify all disharmonies, I can always tell it where I want to do it. In this case, I've been using the example of the gallbladder. So gallbladder would be then 1, 5, 17, 29, and 34. Rest of the dials stay on 0, energy on 75, and in this case I will leave it at 50M. Now what we've done here is to take a rate which is basically a single rate, which is find and rectify all disharmony, and combine it with something else. In this case, an organ. You can always utilize it in a different way, and the other example of that would be using, for instance, say mind or any other organ structure. So you can actually combine any rate. The idea is that if you can perceive the idea of what you want to accomplish, then you can combine them to make up a unique rate structure on its own. And that's another way of actually making up a remedy or actually send a distant treatment to somebody. And the last thing I would like to discuss in this tutorial is the 4 times booster system. Now, this is something which I use constantly, and it's one of the most powerful and most profound ideas available. And that is that if you had set up the rates, in this case then find and rectify all disharmonies, and gallbladder as the goal to which we want to rectify all disharmonies, you can actually then do 4 treatments consecutively. You do a treatment, and if the 1 minute lapse, you immediately start the next session and the next session and the next session. So you're doing 4 different sections of different treatments in consecutive time period, and that is one of the most powerful concepts, and the results are amazing. And this brings me to the end of this tutorial on using the dials. And in our next tutorial, we will look at how to use cards. Thank you.